Dutifulness can be deadly, and churches excel at instilling dutifulness or guilt as the alternative, and sometimes both simultaneously. Sometimes to survive, you just have to get out. And that's the premise behind Barbara Brown Taylor's Leaving Church, a memoir of faith. She says it's hard to be truly faithful to God unless you leave the church. But it's also hard to tell whether this renowned Episcopalian preacher left because it impeded her faith and becoming fully human, or because ultimately she couldn't do it. In other words, is church wrong, or was it wrong for her? She builds the universal case on the personal one, and I struggle with the extrapolation, even as I agree with many, maybe even most, of her conclusions about what's wrong with church. I am not sure that the deadliness was in the job as much as it was in the way I did it, writes Taylor. But I now have higher regard than ever for clergy who are able to wear the mantles without mistaking the fabric for their own skin. Part of the problem is that she herself seems to swing back and forth. I would never leave church, not really, she writes. Taylor fought hard to become a priest at a time when women were still relatively new to the clergy. She worked professionally as a pastor for 14 years. Yet, when this book is written 6 years after leaving, she doesn't attend any church, keeping Sabbath at home, mostly in the great outdoors. As a college professor, she says she is free from being God's representative in others' lives. But she also says that encountering God in others is what helps save her. It's what helps her see the world as God sees it. Perhaps it's kinder and more true to say she holds these views in creative tension as she searches not for the religious certainty she has come to mistrust, but for a sense of ease with the divine and herself. Leaving Church was published in 2006. As trends indicate, Taylor's views are compelling. A declining church may survive, but many find it unnecessary to either faith or fulfillment. In the end, the title says it all. Leaving Church, a memoir of faith. Taylor has lost faith in the church as a place where one can be fully human, especially as the pastor. She is, however, keeping faith in God as found in many spiritual traditions. She closes not with Christian theology, but with Jewish philosophy, quoting Philo of Alexandria. Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a great battle. She certainly is. I chose this book in part because I met Taylor in Seattle in 2019 when she was on tour for her most recent book, Holy Envy, again about finding God across the spiritual traditions. She writes beautifully and is a fine storyteller, weaving an incisive critique of church as we currently do it through the personal story of her call to ministry, early work, professional success, which is major, and finally burnout and renewal. Leaving Church will draw you in and hold you to the end, whether or not you agree with her about leaving church.